Hello, my friends. I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table. Hope you guys are having yourself a great weekend, great holiday. Hope the 4th of July was a great holiday, or it is. I'm not sure when this thing will get posted, but we're getting close to it. What I wanted to do was one of the couple of things our colony Interstellar Frontiers has, it goes all the time, is the infrastructure. The infrastructure is basically what it sounds like: your roads, your bridges, your communications, some of your communications and power grid network needs, your water treatment facility, or your plumbing, things like this. But more importantly, at the very beginning, what we're representing is basically civilized roads and transportation networks. So when you look at our colony at Fairwind, it's set down and it is basically a tiny colony with bare bones. And at 1% infrastructure, we can say that it barely has anything that qualifies as infrastructure. And I got to take a pause for a minute. I'm just not going to be able to sit through another one. There we go. That's better. That's better. Yes, Mitzi, I came back. I didn't run away. So once again, part of our problem with infrastructure is that it's a bottomless pit. And if you want to look at 1% of infrastructure, I would say vaguely there are pathways between the various structures that have been laid down and that were all prefabricated or reconstituted out of sections from our colony ship. So if this was a swampy world, that would make for some pretty treacherous terrain to get around in. We're looking at Fairwind being a plains planet, so it's a lot of grass. And I don't know what you know about plains, but being that I grew up in Iowa, I've learned plenty in my lifetime, so I know that actual prairie grass can grow quite large, and depending on where it is and where it's situated and how much access to water it has, it can make it where you could be literally in a literal sea of grass where you can't see over the grass over your head, or it'll be up to your waist. In any case, there's still some challenges and things like this. So one of the ways we can help address this, especially early on, is by the construction of what we call Tech Zero built. And so we can pull that up on this with coming out of the blueprint guide. And so we talk about Tech Zero builds. Some events say that a local opening a small craft shop or store, or the village or town or city has slapdashes and Tech Zero builds in them. Too small to be considered a true build, these are low-tech operations who are worker-dependent. They often provide for small needs on backwater worlds and outposts. They also do not require build needs to be multiplied by the world's build modifier. This is one of those things that make it an advantage. We're not going to be able to charge taxes, property taxes, insurance, and stuff on these things because they're just too damn small. We're not going to worry about them unless you really want to go into that level of your accounting. That's up to you. The other side of it is that most build modifiers, we're building a build. So if I want to build a customized factory or a customized quarry using a CCB build, customized commercial build, I would then have to take the material required for the build and what I assessed that the build's supposed to achieve, and take it times the world build modifier, the BM. So, which means you would need more materials than what you would normally need. But when we're talking to Tech Zero, we're talking a very tiny amount, and so it's not going to be something we have to worry about. Another thing is about these low-tech operations. In general, they don't require a power grid. I mean, they either have self-contained power generators or something like this, or you may need to acquire them, but they're basic enough. So if I'm looking at what I want to look at right now, let's look at a quarry, right? So we want a quarry. We want to build a quarry, and it's going to be a Tech Zero. And this quarry is basically looking to drag up rock and sand that we can use for road base. And we can start by putting down gravel roads and gravel walkways and things like this to help get our infrastructure going and to increase our necessary things in this. So in this case, we're looking at power is provided by some means, usually chemical generators, wind or water power, even on a truly primitive world, thingy power. While they do not require space to build on the build queue, they do not require space on the build queue, i.e. they do not require a construction operation or ship. They do require about an average workforce of 30 workers. It only takes about one full cycle to build a Tech Zero build. So this is another thing. So I'm going to commit to it now, and next cycle it's operating. And so this case, we're going to be materials or MR deemed appropriate for the builds in question. So in this case, it gives some examples: dirt farm, craft shop, mining operations, special shops. All right. So in this case, I would say that it qualifies as a mining operation. So it will produce. Production will equal 1 m-ton per cycle. Now, what do we quantify gravel and rock to be? That is can come under a couple different categories. This is where you have to make some decisions. So I could call it building material, and then it would be manufacturing 1 ton of BM every turn. I could also say it is carbon, because by definition, stone is also a form of carbon. So particularly, I could say it's a carbon mine or a quarry in this case, and it's going to produce 1 ton of carbon. So it's a matter of what we want and what we need. So when we look at the blueprints, and one of the things that helps to go through would be go through the infrastructure, and let's see if I can find it without spending an hour trying to do so. Yeah, 37, 39. Oh, just a couple pages past this one. All right, so we talk about investing in IFR, or infrastructure. Infrastructure is unique among builds that does not require a build slot, construction time, or a house to have all of its material needs in place before starting on it. IFR is an investment in the colony itself. When a house establishes a commerce and labor ministry on the house-controlled world, the C&L begins to recruit workers and tech stated in the IFR needs. These foods will be work exclusively for the IFR sub-ministry. They connect settlements where possible by road networks and work to improve each village, town, and city per mission statement, etc., etc. So in this case, we're looking at what we have to have every cycle. So our basic infrastructure needs 1.5 tons of carbon. It needs 100. So in my case, I need like 200 and something. So it's 165 tons of carbon times 1.5 if it's the build modifier. So we're looking at 2 something in carbon. But every cycle is going to consume 1.5 tons of carbon as well. And so what I want to do here is I am going to build 5 of these things. We're going to build 5. Right, times 5. Well, that'll give us 5 m-tons per cycle of carbon, because that's what we're going to make this. We're going to make this a carbon operation. So we're going to say carbon operation. Now that's 5 of these damn things. So it sounds all hunky-dory and peachy keen, right? Alright, so we look at where are you at? All right. So we look at mining operation. Build needs recycle is 0.3 credits times 5. So this is going to cost is 1.5 credits per cycle to operate it. And I'm going to need a total of 25 construction material, 15 machinery, 15 tools, 5 utility vehicles, steel 2. So steel 10 tons plus 100. No, it's 150. That's 1.5 credits cost. And then our needs to add to the exchange is going to be 0.25. Why the hell would you use 2.5 carbon? 2.5 carbon, so 2.5 is 1.25. Chemicals, 1.25. Construction material, 0.5. Workers, 30 times 5, so we got 150 workers. Alright, so this thing is going to cost me say 1.2, 2.5, 3.5, so 4. This thing's gonna, so these 4 operations are going to consume 4 tons of consumables to produce 5 tons of a specific consumable. So you do come out ahead, but it's not that much of a hit. And of course, then you have the operating costs as well. So I mean, it's one of those things where, what do we do? How do we deal with it? And no, get off that, you stupid cat! Walk right across the damn little pad thing up here. Yeah. And so when we look at all the required needs, for example, you could replace every need your infrastructure requires with tech zero builds, and it would take a lot of labor. The advantages to that is you're using a lot of labor up. You're giving these people something to do. You also are producing some stuff on a small scale. The downside is that ton for ton, it's not very efficient. The more modern factory builds produce a lot larger amount of material for a lot less intake of consumables. So there's some offshoots to it. One of the big advantages for these tech zeros is when you're setting up small outposts or starter colonies. When you've expanded, now you've got a dozen worlds you got colonies on. Well, maybe you only want 1 or 2 colonies, or you want a colony over here for the sole reason of mining something specific or to exploit some natural resource. And so you don't want to build a huge, elaborate colonial settlement there. So you put a few hundred people there, a couple thousand people there, and then you start giving them some of the stuff you need to have in between there, and go from there. That's just kind of the way I look at it, as one of these things to fill in the missing bumps and to fill in stuff, and then we could just go back and do this whole thing over and over again for basically everything on here. I mean, we could produce many of these items. There's certain things that we wouldn't be able to, or they're just not practical to do. But it's something worth having and worth looking into. Just one more element of the game that I thought you might be interested in knowing. So when I do my chapter 19, or is it 18? Cycle 18 cleanup at the end of the cycle and get everything set up. I will make the adjustments in my exchange, so I would be adding adding all the needs to the negatives on the side, and that way I've got them covered, and the cost of operating these 5 things. Plus I'll have to verify with my labor pool to make sure I have 150 workers sitting around, which I don't think I have an issue with that many workers being, or that few workers. I think I have no problem with that. Then and then the production from here on out would get assigned to the IFR directly. So we would look at, we'd have to, somewhere in my notes, someplace, I've already got the IFR started, and I know that I put I have put nothing in the IFR at all. So I would start as basically a running list of all the requirements needed to fulfill IFR 1 before I can move on to IFR 2. And so to get the IFR 1 fulfilled, we need to get, like I said, it's like 235 tons of carbon, for example. So whenever I get large quantities of carbon that I have no place to store it, first place to go look at is your exchange, or your infrastructure, to see if you can't use it there. And then so the 5 tons of carbon that the infrastructure would produce every cycle, it will offset the negative needs for that carbon, or for the infrastructure, and generate an additional 1. So, I mean, I'm going to generate more than I need, but I'm still going to adjust it. And, of course, it's going to change my carbon needs for my exchange, because having these 5 small quarries are going to allow me to mitigate that situation. Now, obviously, if you want to get 30 or 50 tons of carbon every cycle, this is when you turn to a CCB of a quarry. So we would take the same basic parameters that we used for the Tech Zero and times 10. So a commercial quarry setup would have 1,500 workers, probably in shifts, and then require a handful of technicians who can maintain the equipment, and some administrative people. I mean, that's kind of how that would roll around. That's why the infrastructure, the CCBs, require more of them. But at the end of the day, it might be more efficient to look at that outlet of building a formal quarry for producing carbon, as an example. All right. So anyway, till next time, I'm Rick. You're not. Little Missy's over here eating her late night snack. Hope you guys have a great holiday.